Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jen Marples Show. Today, I have a beautiful guest. Her name is Anne-Marie McQueen. And before I even introduce her, I need to just tell you that you meet the best people. You can meet the best people online. I've said this and said this and said this, and so many of these amazing women have been on this podcast. And Anne-Marie runs HotFlash Inc. So she is a writer. She's Canadian, our neighbors to the north, yet she does not live in Canada. She lives in Abu Dhabi. And so it gave us a lot of brain drain to figure out the timing on how to record this podcast because neither of us could do the math and figure out world clocks. But alas, we finally figured it out. Teamwork really did make the dream work, Anne-Marie, in this case, because it took 15 people to figure out the timing. But alas, I have her on the show. And she, with HotFlash Inc., she is dedicated to giving us all the best information about menopause and perimenopause. So she does all the digging and the searching and the interviewing and talks to experts so she can bring us all the best information. Because what is happening out there right now, there's either not enough information, too much information about one thing, and a hell of a lot of misinformation. So Anne-Marie is basically taking one for the team and doing all this research and spending all of her time digging to bring us everything that we need to live a healthy and vibrant midlife. So you already know she's one of us. So Anne-Marie, with all of that, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited. We were just talking before we got on that we're so excited to see each other sort of face to face on Zoom because we've seen each other in social media for a really long time. And you just meet the best people, and she's one of the best people. And I'm so happy to have you here.
And every time I connect with someone like this, it's just amazing. Like I've followed you. I don't even know. It's interesting when you came into my awareness, and I think we both know Lizzie Bermudez, and she was telling me, and I just absolutely adore connecting with everyone. You are amazing. You're doing amazing things, and just the fact that I get to talk to you is something very cool. And have these friends all over the world. I love it.
I love it too. Friends all over the world. And you're probably like the farthest one I've talked to, I think, is the crow flies. Because I don't know if I've actually spoken to somebody in the Middle East yet. Sidebar about Lizzie, really quick. She was my podcast guest number one. And she is a dear friend, and shout out to Lizzie. She just actually kicked off her podcast. So everybody go listen to it. So it's called The Halftime Show with her friend Meredith Sinclair. So there's a little plug for their podcast because they've been working really hard to bring that. They're in the midlife space. You're going to want to go listen to them as well. And I neglected to mention that Anne-Marie also has a podcast. So she's got her newsletter, and then she's got the HotFlash Inc. podcast. So you can take her on the run and listen to all her fabulous information. So let's dig in. So everyone's going to wonder, how did a Canadian end up in the Middle East? So you're going to tell us that story and then let us know what drew you into zeroing in on, perimenopause and menopause and doing what you're doing today.
Okay, so I have spent half of my career in Canada. I was a columnist and a trends writer, and I'd been in Ottawa for about 8 years. And looking back now, I know that I had some sort of like unspecified yearning, but I didn't know what it was, right? Like it just was sort of something bigger. And leading up to when I moved over here, I wanted to do my master's in New York. So I applied to Columbia, didn't get in. And then there was a journalism sort of program in Ghana that I applied to and got in. And for the Columbia, my boss had said, yeah, we'll give you a leave of absence. For the Ghana thing, they were starting to be like, no, we're not giving you a leave of absence. And I remember the moment when my editor-in-chief said, yeah, I'm not giving you a leave of, and I saw it in his eyes, like, she wants to leave. She just doesn't know she wants to leave. It was really interesting. So then Abu Dhabi, I saw that they were opening a newspaper. I broke up with the guy and I was sitting on my couch, and I always looked at international job boards, and I never thought I was the kind of person who had the courage to do anything like that. And then I saw that the Crown Prince was opening a newspaper in Abu Dhabi, and they were recruiting journalists from all over the world. And it was an amazing editor who'd worked for the Telegraph, who was putting it all together. And I was like, my heart was pounding, and I just applied. And then it was like, boom, just ball rolling. I had a really good job in Ottawa for journalism. And I thought, I'll just go over there for a year. I'll just get some great experience, work with these journalists from the Times and the New York Times and the Times of London and the Guardian. And then I'll come back and I'll be amazing in Canada. And that's just, Things don't really work like that. I've had about 4 different lives over here, and I've stayed, and I really, really, really love it. But 15 years ago, almost to the month, I packed up, sold my condo, put everything into 5 suitcases, and got on a plane for a place I've never been. And I cannot fathom that I did that. But also looking back, I have had an epic perimenopause, and I don't know if that wasn't the beginning, like of just like, I want more. I want something else. This is something else. And I've never been so certain of something.
So when did you decide, when did HotFlash Inc. start then? Because you came to work for like the big fancy newspaper for the royal family. And then did you leave that
Yeah.
because you wanted to do HotFlash, or what was that story?
So I had a whole great career for that newspaper, and I ended up being promoted and becoming the features editor and having a great time. And then that paper was sold. And I was a part of the team overseeing the sale, and then a new editor was hired, and I was one of a couple of people who lost my job in that sale. And it was around the time that I'd had 2 other life kathunks, like big time, like a really sort of, you hear narcissist, I hate saying narcissist, but I had one of those relationships and it ended. And then someone from my past, my first love, came in my life. It was all going to happen again. I was going to move to Canada, and all around that time I lost my job. He backed out, and I had one of those like life breakdowns. Like, just, I had one of those, I don't know. It was dramatic. It was terrible. And it was like, I lost my faith in everything, and I was on the floor, and I sort of threw my hands in the air. And I'm not religious, but I kind of said, Jesus, take the wheel, because I don't know what to do here. In leading up to that, I had finally admitted to myself that I was in perimenopause, because I had weirdness from early 40s, like, and you hear these stories over and over and over. Panic attacks. I started having these crazy nightmares that I was dying, and I needed a pill. I would wake up and be like, oh, I haven't taken my staying alive pill. That was basically the nightmare. Like, it was like I was on the pill to stay alive, and I had forgotten to take it for 8 days. And so I woke up in the middle of the night, like scrambling in my bedside table for this pill that wasn't there. It's nuts. I had no one to talk to about it. Extreme anxiety, chest pains, all the things, mood all over the place, exhaustion, all the things you hear. And, doctor to doctor, no one ever saying perimenopause, me never, my period being normal, basically. And so at 47, I think I missed a period, or maybe I missed 2. And then I was like, okay, I'm in perimenopause, and everything got easier. And then when I was like, okay, you're in perimenopause, I put a Google alert, because I just want all the information, right? I'm just going to get all the information. I've always done that whenever I've been researching a story, and I hated the information. I just hated what was coming back. It was either someone selling something, clearly. It was like Daily Mail type, like fear mongering, you're losing, you're lost, or it was like freelancer.com type content that you buy, loaded with SEO keywords like vaginal dryness 35 times, clearly. And I just couldn't, I never read an article that I would want to read. And by then when I started to notice this, I was running the features department, and I'm obsessed with content. I'm obsessed with like doing a story and getting all the angles, and seeing how we can do it on social media, and seeing how we can make audio and video. And so I just thought, I started talking to my friends, saying, I just think there's a way to do this. And Goop gets so much shade in this space, but I had followed Gwyneth Paltrow's newsletter model since the beginning, and how she just built and built and built and built that. And I thought, I think that I can do this. And Substack was around then, so I wish I had gone straight to Substack, but I didn't. But anyway, that's the long and the short of it. I just needed the content. And I thought, if I need good content, then other people must need it too. Just really, sort of as objective as can be possible, finding these amazing experts, cutting through sort of the influencing. But a lot of that wasn't going on then. Things were much different. And I already noticed that it was polarized at that time. So I already noticed that there was like HRT Helens, I call them, and like natural Nellies, and everyone defending those positions. And I had no idea how much bigger that would get, and how much louder and kind of unpleasant that would get in the time ensuing. But essentially that's it. And I just started with a newsletter. I just started with a MailChimp newsletter in the pandemic, because when I lost my job, I took about 6 months. I luckily I had a nice severance. Thank goodness I was in a financial position to take my time. And then I started freelancing again. I started freelancing for the paper that I'd worked for. I started freelancing all around. A former editor from the paper that I worked at hired me to launch a health and wellness website. So I had been getting my own thing together. I had been feeling the confidence that comes with earning your own money and kind of being your own boss. So that all worked. And then once the pandemic hit, I lost a few freelance contracts, and I thought, now's the time.
So is that so you just do this 100% of the time now, or do you still do some freelancing on the side?
No, I do. I have a whole other platform. So I stopped all the freelancing, except I run this platform for my my former editor, one of my former editors at the national newspaper. He's the only Emirati editor there, and he hired me to do this health and wellness platform for men and women. So it's all health and wellness all the time for me. So yeah, I have basically two platforms, and it gets confusing. You know, we talked before about keeping this all straight, and I have two podcasts and two platforms and two sets of social media.
Damn, I can barely keep track of my one thing, just all over all the platforms. We were talking before we got on, everyone. We're like, is it menopause and brain fog, or is it just actually really complete and total overwhelm? I think it's the latter. I do think it's the latter.
Yeah.
Interesting. Something you said about sort of the East Coast, West Coast, of the natural way to kind of go through menopause, and the Western doctor way, I guess, as it were. I experienced that for sure. I'm going to actually rewind a little bit more to let you know that I also had a horrible perimenopause experience. It was fairly short in the sense that I'd been on the pill because I had endometriosis. So after I had my babies and I had my second at 37, I just went back on the pill because I had to, because that's the only thing that kind of keeps the growth of endometriosis down. And then my doctor said, my OB said, you know, when I kind of hit 45, she's like, you can go off the pill if you want to go off and see what your body's going to do, because the endometriosis isn't going to really grow. Well, that was the same year I shut down my business and was having a whole midlife crisis. And then I went off the pill and then was almost suicidal, and my face started breaking out, and I was depressed and I couldn't get out of bed. Like, what in the actual, I had no idea what was going on. So then I started sort of seeking out answers. And this is going to be a long-winded way of saying, when I went, somebody said, go to a naturopath. So they have their whole way of kind of dealing with things. And the naturopath I went to was lovely and was the only one who was really talking about it. She said, Jen, if you can get through this, when you get to the other side, when you actually are like you've hit menopause, you don't have your period anymore, it's going to be so much better. Because I was like, I will do anything. It was just, I felt I was crazy. I was a literal crazy person, and the breakouts and the this, and it was way worse than any PMS I've ever experienced in my life.
Wow.
And then I go to my OBGYN and tell her I'm seeing a naturopath. She literally freaks the fuck out, and it's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. It was just like this battle. So I get it. And so for women today, you either have providers battling with what they're saying is good for you, or you have people who can't even advise you because they don't know. I have another friend whose doctor told her, it's all in your mind. Thinks that she is like, oh, you got to leave and find somebody else. So thankfully you're doing what you're doing. So take us through like everything that you kind of cover in hot flashing. Cause I know people ask me all the time, and they love when I talk about this on the podcast, because I don't talk about it on every episode. But once I do have an expert like you on, people literally are taking notes and are like, you know, we need help, because you and I are really in it, because we feel close to it. But most women still have no idea.
I have to remember this, because you get in it and I'm big at starting to speak in the middle of the conversation that's going on in my head. And yeah, everyone's not in that space. First of all, this is a really good example of, like, my goal is to bridge that gap. that you experienced so painfully, I'm sure, because you feel like you're crazy when you're sitting in front of a doctor that's saying that to you. But then you were with the naturopath that was probably making a lot of sense. Like within you was resonating, because that naturopathic doctor is designed to look at you as a whole person, integrated, everything working together. But they also have quite a lot of the medical training that the doctor has. And so they're not denying anything, except they may be denying certain medical things, or saying like that, it's common to go to a naturopath and have them say, I don't think that's a great idea, or whatever. But this space is so incredibly confusing. And if people don't understand it, you can get pulled hither and yon. And first of all, I just want to say, like, going off the pill is a major, major thing. Like, I think I went off the pill at 27, and I would tell anyone who goes off the pill, you should approach that as its own entity. Like, that is a transition that needs to be handled with care, because I was in turbulence at 28. Like, I was in turbulence for, I remember 6-8 months, terrible acne breakouts. My moods were all over the place. So add that on to perimenopause, add that on to endometriosis. I'm not a doctor, but right away it's like, wow, you kind of needed to be guided through that. So anyway, the medical side is looking at you as a bunch of parts, and the naturopathic world is looking at you as a whole. And the medical side is the one that's threatened, and the naturopathic world side isn't. And I find, I'm generalizing here, but the integrative naturopathic side and the medical side does tend to demonize the integrative naturopathic side. So this is the world we're in, and it's to varying degrees. But when you're in that medical world, which you need, you will hear things like there is no adrenal fatigue, bioidentical hormones are bad, even though bioidentical hormones are approved by the FDA. You'll just hear things that don't make a lot of sense, and you are treated sort of like a series of parts. I've just been through this because I've been diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, fatty liver, hyperglycemia, gut issues. I've had gut issues ever since I went off the pill years ago, and I may have had Crohn's and not known it. But I was going in within the same hospital here in Abu Dhabi and saying to doctors, is this fatty liver not connected to the thyroid? Nope. Like, it is. I can just Google myself studies. So all that to say, this is incredibly confusing. And if you're on social media following people, it's even more black and white, because there's people literally, there's a doctor saying, if you're going to a naturopathic doctor and they prescribe you bioidentical hormones, run. If you go to a naturopathic doctor and they order the Dutch test for you, run. And that's just like, I hear things like this all the time. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Like, absolutely, I believe we need both. And people will say, but Anne-Marie, like, it's so expensive. And I get it, because I don't have unlimited means. And when I got this diagnosis in the middle of perimenopause, I'm like, I need help. So I asked around in Abu Dhabi. I have a good network, and I found a general physician who is training in homeopathy and gut health, and she's putting me on a plan. And I have to pay for it, but I got to take money from somewhere else. If I don't have my health organized, this is going to get worse down the road, and I'm not going to have any sort of quality of life. So it needs to be taken care of. So I believe that you need to have both. And I believe we need to, and I hate saying this because we don't all have means, but if there's a way to try and do both and take care of your whole self, because we are a beautiful orchestra. We are like earth in one person, and to go to someone who would deny you or gaslight you and be threatened by someone else who's just looking at you as a whole person, that's damaging psychologically. And sometimes we need the doctor we have. So I sort of look at it as using the doctor. I use my medical doctors because those tests are covered. And then the main thing is you have to take full responsibility for this yourself. You can't just go to the doctor. And what we need to do at this time in our life, because we're so busy, is what we want is someone to take care of it for us and solve it for us. But if we outsource it that way, we're giving away our power, and we can go down a road, right? Like if you hadn't gone to the naturopathic doctor, if you hadn't, we need to be on top of it, just like we're on top of everything else. And this is one thing where I feel it's just easy to be like, I can't, I can't. Okay. She says to take this and this is going to work. Does it make sense?
It does. And you bring up a lot because we do need to advocate for our health in anything that's going on, and specifically this. And we know there's a lot of, we've all heard the statistics. I've had doctors on the show before saying that in medical school, they're just simply not trained in menopause.
No.
It's a very little bit of what they learn unless they've gone and sought out extra help and education or extra education on it. So you're also dealing with somebody who might not know anything. In the case of my friend who said, it's all in her head. And then trying different things. So I'm still in my own journey of, I've tried some patches, they didn't work. And I kind of specifically said to my doctor, I said, I can't do these patches. I don't know if it's just, I'm very sensitive to the hormones. So maybe is there like an oral something I can try? And this is going to get into the question, because I want you to like really lay it out for everyone and give us sort of your top 3 to 5 tips on how to actually find the information, sort of distill it, disseminate, and figure out what's for us. Because right now, all the stats are out. Menopause is big business right now. Like there, we see all the projections of like, it says 500 billion. I've seen like 500 billion. So there's all these supplements. So of course they get fed to me because this is the space I play in. The supplements, the CBD, the this, the lube, the that, the lotions, the creams and potions and this and that. And should you be on hormones? Because it's this. And if I'm not on hormones, am I going to get dementia? I mean, and I'm in it and I'm an educated person. And this is what I pay attention to. But for the average person who is working a full-time job, has nothing to do with this in their life, and has children, is running around, where do you begin? Like, how do you even begin to sift through the information to make solid choices?
Okay. Well, first of all, I get confused all the time because I interview people and then they have their own perspective. So I think number one, everyone is different. That is why you have to be the CEO and mother and sister and best friend of your own health, the director, the manager. Approach it like a project, like everything else in your life, and keep a spreadsheet. Or if you're a spreadsheet person, I'm not. Keep a Google Doc. that is you have to. We're taking responsibility for everything in our lives, our past trauma, and I'll talk a little bit about all that stuff and how it plays in. But I think this is like a project to be managed. And it is something that we're figuring out ourselves and what we feel and think about things in this time of our life. And this is the time to do it. So a lot of this is common sense. How many times have you been to the doctor and they've said something and you're just like, that doesn't make sense for me. Like if you went back and said the patch didn't work for me and the doctor said, well, I'll give you a higher dose, that probably wouldn't resonate with you, right? And if you're on social media and all these women are raving about hormone therapy and you're seeing influencers saying it's so important to prevent future disease and menopause is a deficiency, and that doesn't resonate with you, well, perhaps that's because you know that it doesn't make much common sense to portray something that's naturally happening as a deficiency or as a disease. So I think approaching it as a project to be managed, getting really clear on how you feel about health. And this may be new to you. A lot of people go to the doctor for everything, take whatever pill the doctor says, have been taking aspirin and ibuprofen or whatever you call it, Pepcid AC, sleeping pills, whatever. I'm not saying you have to turn into like a natural Nelly, but I'm just saying looking at your body as a whole, managing that project and getting really, really clear with what resonates, what feels right. Because I overrode my own intuition so many times with doctors in my life. I was always trying to find another kind of birth control after I went off the pill. And my doctor was so irritated with me. And, and he would tell me to take this or that. So if you're in the office and it feels right to you, I also think that if you're going to go the hormone therapy route or a supplement route or anything, low and slow is a really good way to go. I don't think there's anything, there are certain drugs that a doctor will say, no, you need to do this dose for it to work. But I think low and slow is a good way. Social media has some great information, but I get very concerned about the information that's on there, because I think when you become an influencer, whether you're a doctor or whether you're an average person, it's very easy to develop audience capture and just start relaying the information that your audience responds to. And so you become like sort of a one note person. And I'm very concerned about the doctors on social media who have gotten huge. How do we know that they're being responsible? How do we know that they're giving us the information that we need? How do we know? We just don't know. And people treat those doctors like gurus. And I know why, because they're struggling and they don't have time. And they're like, this doctor will have the answer. But I think that's problematic. So I really recommend following like a range of people, and some you agree with and some you don't agree with, because this is another problem of social media, is that we've all sort of been in algorithms for so many years that we sort of have trouble tolerating like alternate points of view. And in all, I've curated I have an expert panel coming out, and they're just really reasonable, humble, intelligent experts who don't have any sort of the ego that you see on social media. And I'm going to be sharing that soon. But for now, the two experts who I absolutely adore, who provide sort of an all-around, are Anise Mukherjee, who is an endocrinologist in Britain, and she has written a book called The Complete Guide to Menopause. She's been through breast cancer, so she couldn't take hormone therapy. And she is very reasonable. Like, to her, HRT is a dusting, a sort of a, what does she call it? Accessory after you get all the other lifestyle things in place. And that's not what you hear a lot of the time. HRT is an essential, like, first go-to. So she is just excellent. I've spoken to her. She's so reasonable. She's not in any way compromised, because a lot of people that we see are compromised in ways that we don't know, right? Like, I don't know exactly how money may be flowing or what influence may be happening, but they are. The other person is Lara Bryden, who is a naturopathic doctor, Canadian, who lives in New Zealand, and she's written a book called Hormone Repair Manual. And both of those doctors share excellent information on social media. Lara is, I think she's trying HRT. I think she's herself, like, she's not anti-HRT. She's just so smart, so humble, so ahead of the curve. And so those two, I really pay a lot of attention to, because they're the most reasonable voices. And if someone's yelling at you to go on HRT, if they're overselling the benefits, particularly the preventative benefits, it's a minefield. What did I call it? A beehive out there with the hormone therapy. But it's something to be approached with a certain amount of caution, I think. And I will remain somewhat skeptical about it. And that doesn't mean I'm criticizing it in any way. I just think breathless enthusiasm about any sort of external thing you take is probably not wise at this time. We should be approaching anything we put in our body and adding even a supplement with care. Does that give you some indication?
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. And for everyone listening, and we'll link all those books and everything in the show notes, because that's really great information. There is so much information, and I know you're coming at it from a journalist perspective, and, being calm and really just, peeling back the layers to provide everybody with the best information and resources and all of that. So this is why you guys have to follow her, and you need to subscribe to Anne Marie's newsletter, listen to her podcast, because she brings on really great people. And like, you can hear how she knows this stuff. She knows this stuff and does all the digging for us. But listening to yourself, and like what you said, of just really tapping in and not overriding your own sort of gut feeling about what might be right. Because I definitely had that. And I've kind of been skeptical my whole life about things. And I'm really into all sorts of modalities. So I have more of an open mind. So when my Western doctor is sort of saying, no, it's kind of this way, and I was like, that's not feeling right for me. I think I'm going to take a little of this. Like you said, I'm going to do the blood test and all the stuff here that's under the insurance. The other stuff is not covered. And that is a whole, probably another conversation of the tragedy of all this. And I know there's people fighting to get more of this menopause support covered by insurance, because there's a whole disparity. You've heard it, I've heard it, and it's not right, but we can't solve that on today's show, unfortunately. um as far as, I just love your take, and then I'm going to move into some other just fun questions about women in midlife, but I would love your take on all the other products that are out there right now. We're getting moisturizers, like the beauty products, hair products, vaginal dryness products, like everything under the sun. What's your take on that? And I'm looking at everything, and it's again, it's kind of peeling back the layers. Is this just a company who wants to add another product line because they want to capitalize? And you and I both know some other founders who are really in this world and really want to create something really magnificent, transparent, beautiful for women so they can feel good. But if it's the skin, dry vaginas, whatever the heck it is. Like, how can we like approach that and look, or what should we be looking for in these types of products? It's everywhere from like the head to the toe. We've seen it all at this point, I think.
Well, first of all, there's this criticism of this menopause gold rush. And there was that New York Times article that it just used a picture of Gwyneth Paltrow that she painted herself gold when she turned 50. It had nothing to do with menopause, but that picture. And then it just, people just react to everything. And so now the menopause gold rush, the tone I don't like in any of this conversation is there's a very sort of infantilizing tone to women. Like, women are going through this, and women, I mean, we've been marketed to for a very, very long time. Like, if it wasn't, I don't remember, it was like 1 minute that I went from feeling that I had to worry about my body to feeling about old. I literally felt like it was in one dinner with my friends that I was like, oh, now we're all talking about old. It used to just be that we would talk about it. It's never stopped. So I'm not that bothered. I'm not sitting here saying women need to be, I don't like that tone in anything. And it pervades this menopause space. It pervades all of it. So one thing that does bother me is the obsession with skincare and weight loss and the superficial aspects. And okay, right, we all want to go around looking our best, but I feel like a lot of the weight of the conversation gets focused on that. And I've tried skincare. I've done every treatment as part of my previous work, and I'm very skeptical about what you apply to your face. I do think a ton of it is what you're doing on the inside. So I do think a lot of that is like noise. The solutions that are coming for like the vagina stuff and other solutions that are coming, I think they're great. And I think some of the criticism for all of those options, like, women need options. A lot of those criticisms are coming from that vocal hormone therapy will fix everything category. Like, the people who are hormone therapy will fix everything really almost have ground to defend. So they seem to get very sort of bejiggity about any sort of other solution or option potential that comes along. I think we need options, because not everyone wants to put vaginal estrogen in their vagina for the rest of their life, because that's what I'm hearing, is that if you go in vaginal estrogen, you have to do that for the rest of your life. That doesn't really, like, call me, I feel like this is heresy to say, but that's just not something that really appeals to me. It doesn't appeal to me to do that. I'm the person who went and got laser hair removal when I was 30, when I could barely afford it, because I thought, why am I doing this waxing of my bikini line every couple of weeks when they've come out with a permanent solution? I saved up and I did it. So I'm much more interested in, I'm seeing a lot of vaginal solutions that aren't hormone based. And I think that is good. I think that people want that. And that makes the sort of hormone lobby irritated. But I hear from women all the time that there are remedies that you can have, like sea buckthorn oil and certain. I spoke to Jerry Lynn DiPiano, who's a really cool executive who worked in pharma. She has a company, Fem Pharma. They have a lot of non-hormonal options for vagina stuff, and she's really focused on doing it. So she said there's a lot of product that people are putting in there, and it's messy. And so her whole thing was like, how can we make this the least messy experience, a non-hormonal experience? She's never gone on hormones. So I like that. I'm just testing some of these gel sticks from this Israeli company. I love Hello Again, that company that's doing the CBD and THC. there are some really cool solutions that are coming out, and I think we need them. I don't know why everyone's sort of crapping all over them. I'm more interested in more permanent solutions, as I said. So I'm interested in radio frequency for vagina stuff, like there's sound therapy, lasers. There was just a study that came out from the North American Menopause Society that I have to look into. That's about, there's emerging evidence for lasers, and that's a better solution. That can, it's not just dry vagina that people have. I don't have that problem, but I have, it's scratchy sometimes. And I sometimes feel like I have muted orgasms. Well, no one's really like out there solving that issue, but these things solve that issue. Like I did an interview with someone at the V-Spot clinic, Monica Grover, in New York City. And she said, when you have this laser therapy, like not only is there an actual effect from the laser that will enhance orgasms and bring back sexual pleasure and help vaginal dryness and tighten up everything. But there's also like a placebo effect, which is a dirty word, but shouldn't be, because the placebo effect is amazing. It's like you're taking care of that area. And there was a doctor in Dubai at an event a couple of weeks ago who said that she was doing radio frequency, and it actually helps with a lot of the urinary issues that women face at this time. So it can tighten everything up in there. And, I'm really interested in those things because yes, they're more expensive up front, but you could spend a lot of money on these solutions over time. And so I'm really not that interested in skincare, to be honest. Like I need to be, right? Because this is where all the, like, notice most of the companies coming are skincare. But it's just, I don't know. I think they're doing some good things. I think you need a skincare routine. I think you might as well have, all the good products in your skincare, but I'm more interested in these really interesting ways to get at the things that plague us. And the genitory syndrome of menopause vagina stuff is a big category that needs help.
Ooh, it does. And I hadn't heard about some of that stuff with the laser. I've heard of it for just like sort of tightening, but I've never heard about it for some of this other realm. That's big. I actually just started, oh God, I can't remember the name of the company. This gal who came out with just products all natural, and they're, being, my friend Jeannie Jarno has Beauty Heroes, and she has like the most stringent qualifications in, I think, if the whole beauty industry of what she'll carry. So it's just earth friendly, sustainable, green, healthy, like the whole 9 yards. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going to buy something for the vag, I'm going to do it here. It's going to kill me. I can't remember. I'm going to link it in the show notes, but it's just a vaginal moisturizer, but like all now, like safe enough to use in your face. And so I started using it. I'm like, well, this is great, because I love this conversation because none of us talk about a moisturized vagina, because you think about an estrogen situation, but that apart, like we should be taking care of all of our skin. We're putting lotion on our legs and arms and face. So maybe like that other big important spot on our body should be taken care of as well. So I love, so I agree with you. I love that there's a lot of solutions, but everybody do your diligence. Of course, if you're putting something in the nether regions, we want it to be healthy and have none of the crap in it. And then I agree with you too, Anne-Marie. We all need to put our health first. And I tell women this all the time. We've got to put ourselves first. We can't be working ourselves into the ground. We've got to go big, go big on the sunlight. That total sidebar, I have to say that Anne-Marie and our friend Lizzie, they followed Dr. Huberman. So follow him. He does like 2-hour podcasts on everything medical related. It's hysterical, but there's the whole thing. I've talked about it, going out to see the sunlight in the morning to get you going for the day. It helps with your sleep at night. We all need that sleep, especially at this midlife phase. But going in on your sleep, water, some of the basics, right? Eating healthy, exercising. I have a weighted blanket. I have magnesium to sleep, everything to sleep. My husband doesn't know it yet, but he's going to get kicked out of the bed soon, because sleep, I think, is the most important thing. And it's like, you snore, you toss and turn. Like, I need this. Like, this is my most important life hack right now. He's like worried we're going to get divorced. I'm like, no, it's just a hack. Okay. This is keeping me healthy. So there's all those things. And then we can layer in everything else. But it's kind of getting to that baseline. If you're, smoking cigarettes, eating Cheetos, and not working out, nothing's going to help. So
yeah, definitely. So it's funny that you say that, because I'm seeing someone and he lives in Dubai. So he's going to be sleeping over, and I've been wanting to I've sort of fallen in love with someone. I'm really happy with someone new, and he's going to be sleeping over, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I've wanted this for so long, but I don't know if I want it. Like when I'm starfished on my bed, I have really felt for my married menopausal friends. Yeah, sleep is very important. So look, I think some basics that get overlooked. Number one, morning light, stretching at night. 15 minutes of stretching to a YouTube video is magical. It is morning light and stretching at night. I'm going to put it on social media very soon. This is an overlooked combination. But things that I wonder if people aren't paying attention to. You definitely need to clean up your skincare routine and all of your household toxins. I've spoken to air pollution experts. The air pollution is mostly coming from inside the house. Everyone thinks of air pollution. Air pollution is a huge problem. Like if you look at the statistics of deaths from air pollution, it's like it's 7 million people a year. It's insane. But I spoke to an air pollution expert in Dubai, and he blew my mind. He was like, Amory, we're obsessed with burning things. We shouldn't be burning things. Anything scented, anything you spray in your house to clean, where do you think that water is going? It's evaporating. And when you eat something, it goes in your body and you have to digest it. When you inhale something, it's all over your system immediately. So this is very hard for people who are obsessed with these giant stores that are filled with scents, perfume, like all of this stuff is causing a lot of problems, and it's a lot to replace at once. So I always, I did it years ago, just slowly. Like you finish the shampoo and then you buy a new shampoo. You finish the face wash, you buy a new face wash, and all that. It's in your kitchen. Cleaning all that up, lowering that toxic load on ourselves is like intensely important. Alcohol is huge. Like when you ingest alcohol, your body has to process that immediately. So every other nutrient gets shoved to the side. And I don't think if you're drinking pretty regularly that and I know this because I've been through it personally. I was a pretty big binge drinker. Like I loved to just sit down and have cigarettes. Like I would just love nothing more than cocktails and cigarettes with my girlfriends. And I don't think if you're doing that regularly, you're understanding the emotional toll that's happening when you're in this. We're in an extremely vulnerable, dysregulated body trying to grab onto balance state. So to be drinking alcohol regularly on a physical level, it's the time to look at that on an emotional level too. And then also on sort of the spiritual level of how am I using the things in my life? How am I using alcohol? How am I using smoking is obviously one, but coupled with this looking at things like how am I in what I'm buying, what I'm ingesting, what I'm using. Am I eating processed food? Am I eating ready-made sauces and things that have chemicals in them that are upsetting my gut? All of these things on a spiritual level are looking at your life and really overhauling it as you go, just saying like, I want to make sure I'm putting the best thing in my body that I can afford, that's best for my family. And then I feel like what is never sort of addressed is like the trauma that you've been through when you were younger, the adverse childhood experiences. More and more and more, I'm hearing experts talk about this. The 40s is when this comes home to roost. I sort of compare it to like a boiling pot that's got a lid on it. And it's just like, it just can't handle it anymore. And the ways we've been, this has been studied that the menopause experience is worse. People have more symptoms when they have adverse childhood experiences, trauma that they haven't processed. And I always say, you don't have to have been chained to a radiator in the basement. We're children of parents, and we grew up in the 70s. Like we were left out to pasture. We were left crying. Our parents had a good time. We were, left on our own. Like a lot of us did not have the kind of parenting that's happening now, or ideal parenting. So processing all this, recognizing it, learning to process your emotions, asking yourself how you've been dealing with emotions in ways that are not healthy, like eating, drinking, whatever. I'm learning at 52, like, okay, yesterday I just had a feeling. It just felt like upset. It was like hovering around the side of my face. Like, I'm upset. What is it? I just had like a little cry. And someone I interviewed said, that's just the tears you didn't get to cry years ago. Like, just cry like 90 seconds and you'll feel better. But if you ignore it and go do something and distract yourself, all of these things play together, and it sounds overwhelming, but it's more just waking up and being aware and like sort of being in the moment and saying, how am I going to move forward and try and unravel some of these things that aren't good for me and put things that are, add in good things in their place.
Ooh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I've talked about that on this show. I dedicated one show to mental health, and it's the truth. And the most powerful thing we can do is heal ourselves. If that's the only thing you do, it's going to have that ripple effect. And you've got to, I was all in that place too, admittedly, when I was going through the midlife sort of crisis. And it's like reaching for a glass of wine every night. I'm not a daily sort of drinker. I like to have a good time. I do like to have a good time, and I pay for it. I have freaking night sweats and hot flashes, and I do pay for it when I do have and that's like really like 2 or 3 glasses of wine. It's not even like binge drinking or like 2 margaritas.
Yeah.
It's tragic.
No, same. I have the same. Yeah.
And then we don't sleep well, and then we're tired, and then it kind of has that thing. But the women I talk to, it's like you've got to really ask yourself. It's always going to be, unless you're just having that fun night out with some girlfriends, but if you're really reaching for whatever it is, food, shopping, this or that, to mask something, now's the time, because it's this beautiful phase where if we can finally uncover and kind of get back to who we are, and it's all about like stepping back into who you are and your true authenticity. And it's not easy to sit down and be quiet and listen to yourself and go, oh shit, I got to deal with that. But it's like, deal with it, because then the other side of it, like you're saying, it's great because you've got
freedom.
You've processed through exactly freedom. You've got the tools. And if something triggers you, it's not going to be what it was because you didn't deal with whatever you're dealing with. And we've all got something from the past. We all do. Or there's something maybe that's transpiring now that needs to be addressed, but just address it.
Yeah. And I mean, this is people think, oh, well, I need therapy and I can't afford therapy. I'm getting, we're living in a world now where there are more avenues to uncover this stuff than ever before. I don't know that you necessarily need to go to therapy. I had therapy for 4 years in my 40s, and then I ended it because I just felt like we'd reached the end of the road and I was in a box, and I've never gone back. I guess I will if something comes up, but I've done other things. Like there are books like Nicole LePera's book, How to Do the Work, is one of the most important books, I think, to read, because it's basically a toolkit for this. It can be done in your own if you feel that you can handle it. And I think when you need extra help. But I hate the suggestion for therapy because therapy is so out of reach for so many people, right? And, this is the free stuff you can do. This is the stuff you can do on your own, asking yourself the questions, feeling the feelings. I had a lot of I've never been married or had kids, and I had a lot of stuff. And I would have told you that I just had sort of wasn't lucky, or things didn't happen for me. And I was making decisions all along the way. Like when I look back on my life, I was choosing this. I just wasn't living in it. You know what I mean? The traditional life wasn't for me. But I also had a lot of fear about relationships and dating, and I was sabotaging things in ways I didn't understand. So that was one of the things I addressed a couple of years ago, and that I took courses. Like I love Mark Groves, Create the Love. He's just a wonderful person. And in the pandemic, I sort of went to Mark Groves University and took his courses, and they helped me sort of figure out what was going on in the background and why I wasn't showing up in relationships as myself, and really did help me get to a point that I started dating authentically and got to this point. But just to go back to looking at things and taking toxins out of your life and food, it's very easy at this time to become, I think, orthorexic, which is basically when you just become like literally obsessed with toxins and not putting, it happened. I walk that line all the time because I'm having gut issues. So I'm really low on the number of foods I can eat. And I'm very aware of some of the ingredients in our foods that have been approved. But it's very important to not become consumed, because I also interviewed an expert from India, and he said, Emery, on this subject, he said, we are amazing people. With everything that the world throws at us, we should be dead by now. But look, we've adapted to all of it. We've adapted to industrialization and every single thing. So we're kind of okay. It's just something to be mindful of. It's not something you have to become like a vigilant person about. So while I want everyone to be mindful about it, it's no time to make it your absolute mission in life to be clean and pure, because there's a lot of that on social media too. And that is not healthy either.
And I know that term, I kind of personally live by the 80-20 rule. It's like, if you can try 80, some days it's like 50. Maybe I shoved some chips in my mouth before I got on this podcast. Maybe I didn't. I'm not going to tell. But back in the day, actually, when I had my PR firm, and Whole Foods was one of my clients, John Mackey, the CEO, was vegan. And just to make a long story short, it was kind of the whole ethos is what we were promoting. And I went all in. All of a sudden, I'm just like, what I was preparing, my husband lost like 10 pounds because I was cooking like a lot of tofu. There wasn't any like chicken or steak happening. Like, and I did get to a point where sometimes you're like, there's nothing I can eat because it has gluten, or it has this or that and the other. And then you don't eat. You're like, well, what is that? Like, that doesn't. So I do understand that tendency to kind of go across that bridge and go, oh, okay, this is, and then you got to just rein it in. And then you just 80-20 people,
80-20. Yeah. I think you need to, a happy donut is a beautiful thing.
A happy donut. I love that. Well, I think we've talked like a lot about all the challenges from women at midlife, but I do want to ask you a couple of my favorite questions. What do you think women can do better to support each other, especially in this midlife menopause phase?
Well, something I've learned from some newer friendships I've made is just support each other. Stop second guessing. I have older friends and I have newer friends, and I can tell the difference when I say a new initiative or I say something I want to do, not second guessing them. We are so prone to look for the negative in ourselves, to look for the thing that can go wrong. And I think this is something we can do for ourselves too, is just like, I want to do X. And then immediately your brain will come up with all the potential problems for why that would be dangerous for you to do. Because, this is a complex psychological thing, but basically I understand that that part of your brain wants to keep you safe. And if you do something new, then you may put yourself at risk. So your friends are doing that to you. And the friends you've known for a long time, sometimes the people you love the most are doing that. I have just really gone all in on my friendships that I don't get that feeling, where I tell them something and I'm just being like, not supported, not second guessed. This is not the same thing as having someone just agree with me all the time. Because one of my best friends friendships has developed here in Abu Dhabi, she'll call me out on stuff all the time, but she's there and she fully believes in me and I know the difference. And so becoming that kind of friend, and where are you at in that? Like, if your friend tells you she wants to do something new, are you like, oh, are you sure, Sue, because you know how you start new things, and then not being eye rolling. And on social media, this infantilizing of other women is driving me crazy. And this happens in ways large and small. You just don't see this with men, or I don't see this with men. We are so smart. We are so wise by now. Yes, we're confused and tired, but we have been through almost everything we have ever experienced. So just figuring out how to use that to move forward and being that friend, just being that friend. And I think when when you get jealous, do you get jealous ever, envious of people? Like, you get that little, like, someone's doing something. And I really like to listen to that cue and just think, okay, well, what about it do I wish I was doing? What about that is something that I want? Because I think a lot of people shove that feeling down too, because it's not right to feel that way. It's just the way you feel. There's nothing right or wrong with it. And we all get jealous, even people who say they don't. So I think you can support women better by when you feel that. Like, there's a lot of people feeling that feeling and they don't know it, so they're sort of acting bizarre. So I think just paying attention to how you feel about certain things, even with your friends. And you know what else everyone does with women? And we all do it, where you're talking about someone and you're saying, well, I don't, like, someone finds a new boyfriend. And there's like, if you're in a group and some people aren't that nice, and it's like, well, I mean, he's from Mexico and I don't even know if he's going to be able to stay here in his visa. Like, all the gossiping, criticizing, just not getting involved in that. I just made up that scenario. I don't know why I made it up, but you know what I'm talking about?
100%.
The glass of wine, like, Sue and Joe have decided to become polyamorous, but it's never going to work. Well, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like I'm using extreme examples, but it happens on such a small scale and you get wrapped up in it and it doesn't serve any of us because they're doing what is right for them. And why not try to change the conversation a little bit to like, wow, what an interesting thing these people are doing. Like, let's not just immediately crap all over it.
Yeah, let's not judge. It's everyone gets to live their own life. And it's my big advice to people is like, don't give a shit what anybody thinks. They're not thinking about you anyway. And if you are thinking about them, to your point, you have other better things to do. And the thing you said about the jealousy, I'm actually giving a talk in a few days as we record this about women supporting women. We must do better. And I use that point. So if you see a woman walking in or something's triggering, what is it? What is it? So use that as information because usually it's going to say, oh, I'm not doing that thing that I really want to be doing. So it's really triggering to see this woman, if she's in love or she's got a new promotion or whatever it is, it's always something back to us. And so to your point, we can't waste time thinking about other people, just use it as information and then get something going in your own life to help you get towards your goals. And the same thing about talking shit about somebody else. It's like we have got to move on from that because nobody wins in that game. And it's just toxic. It's negative. It's everyone just live and let live. And you brought it up. We've all been through so much stuff. We're all at this midlife phase. Everyone's doing interesting things. There's so much more interesting stuff to talk about, than if so-and-so's in her polyamorous relation. Go have fun. Let us know how it goes. Maybe you'll write a book about it someday. Whatever. We don't know how it's going to go. So we got to be done with that. Like full stop. So one of my final questions. Go ahead.
Well, just making friends. Were we going to talk about that? Making friends, because a lot of women, it's hard. I think it's hard. I hear from people, I didn't make friends, or I left that job and now I don't have any friends. Like supporting people and connecting people. I think like that's another really cool thing about this menopause community that I found is everyone's really good at connecting people. No one's like jealous or weird about it. And so supporting other people making friendships is something that we can do. I think. And then, it's even supportive when you meet someone to like foster that and see where it goes to the best of your capability.
I love that. So before we got on, you guys, we were talking about you've heard me say this before, and Anne-Marie was saying the same thing. Like, who knew that going into this space, as well as starting a podcast, that it would end up with knowing so many beautiful women and making friendships all around the world, all over the place. And I didn't even think about that. That was going to be one of the things I was going to check off my box. Is like make new friends when I started my podcast. And I know all of you aren't going to start a podcast, but you've heard me talk about this ad nauseum. And the fact is you can make beautiful, wonderful relationships at midlife with other women. You just have to get out of your zone and go find the people. And there are so many women, like I hope I get to meet you face to face one day, but I might not because you live way the hell on the other side of the world, really far away. But, when you do end up meeting people, it could just be an online relationship. I've met the most amazing women, like at the start of COVID, I think, because we really embraced all of this too. Met women on LinkedIn. I met women on Instagram. Some have ended up on the podcast, like Anne-Marie and this whole community that we're in of everyone sort of fighting for women in the midlife space. This tight group. Some of us have met in person, most haven't. And everyone's showing up for each other and supporting each other. And it's this beautiful thing. And I was actually interviewed on a podcast about friendships. And I'll just say this quick thing is that I realize that I'm an extrovert. You're pretty extroverted. You're out there. So it's sometimes it might be easier for some, but you have to just have intention behind it and really seek it out. And you don't need a million friends. You just need to find the right people. So find, an affinity thing that you like. If it's like a book club or a ceramics class, a new yoga studio, Pilates studio, go hear an author speak and just put yourself in the way of people with some shared interests. Strike up a conversation. I mean, I'm at the point now where I walk in, I'm like, who are going to be all my new best friends? Like so many people, I just meet people and I fall in love. And that's just how I roll. Because I also assume I'm just going to meet the best women. And I do.
Oh, that's a huge part of it. Living in Abu Dhabi has been really good for this because people leave, people come and go. And so sometimes you'll be like, oh my God, like my really good friend is leaving. Like what's going to happen to my social circle? So you have to keep replenishing your social circle and you have to reach out And I learned that in the beginning of HotFlash because some amazing women reached out to me. Like someone awesome reached out and said, like someone very powerful said, I think we should be friends. Like she just found my newsletter and thought that I was cool. And that meant the world. And now sometimes I'll do that. And they don't all work out, right? But here, sometimes I went to a brunch about 6 months ago and there was an awesome woman there. And then she asked for my number. And I felt like it was better than if there was a guy there when I was single and I got asked on a date. I was like, woo. And that friendship hasn't turned into the fullest blown friendship because we're very busy, but we've been for coffee and lunch. And both of those hours were like the most enriching thing to me because she's like a very accomplished woman. She's from Georgia, not the one in the States. And so you have to reach out, you have to be intentional, and you have to not take it personally if it doesn't go anywhere.
No, and it's that whole nothing ventured, nothing gained. And one of my clients, I'll leave everybody with this, was she was feeling, because she had sort of had half of her social circle wiped out through divorce. So she kind of lost a lot. And I know that's very real because that happens in midlife. She kind of lost half the family, half the friends, right? It's like, who gets this friend? Who gets that friend? And she was feeling like everybody was negative or people were catty. And I said, if that's what you look for, that's what you're going to find. So you just really have to, I said it before, you just have to change that mindset and walk in and go, I'm here to find fabulous women, and I'm here to offer myself and my help and my friendship and my love to people. And that's what you're going to get in return. Maybe you're not going to find BFFs. You might find one or two, but it's just having that attitude, and then anything is possible. But even what you said, just having the one coffee or lunch with your one new friend, it doesn't have to be, every week we're meeting for coffee. No one really lives like that. We're all too busy. But just knowing that she's there, and I bet like in a pinch, if you needed something from her, or she needed something from you, she could be like, hey, Anne Marie, what do you think about this? So it's just, having that open mind and being open to different relationships. And they're going to be different than how they were when we were younger.
Meaningful connections, however long or short. But you reminded me of something I wanted to say earlier, when those things are dancing around in the back of your mind. Expecting the best, hoping for the best, planning for the best, rather than going in and thinking about what can go wrong in every part of our life is one of the most important things we can do now, changing the way you approach things. So, in the dating world, I did this because, I've been in and out of relationships for a long time. I've been out there. I feel like I've been out there the whole time. And the conversation around dating, when I was 30, when all my friends were getting married, it was a very scarcity mindset. And the people who were getting married were so excited and happy that they found love that they perpetuated it too. But it came from within me. It came from many articles I read. It came from that whole baby panic, you better get going to have babies, like scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. So I slowly over time, like really changed my mindset about that. But as I've gotten in my 40s, I realized how it it permeates everything. And if you can just approach things from that perspective of like, how can this go well? And one of the coolest turning points in dating for me was I watched a video by Tracy McMillan, who's a relationship coach, and it's so beautiful. It's called Who You Should Really Marry. But in it, she said, like, look at dating as I just get to spend an hour with another human being connecting. And now I look at that with every interaction I have, because nothing is given. And you don't know if you spend an hour with someone, you don't do it to get something, to get a friendship. So that intention, it reminds me of TikTok, because there's these two girls on TikTok that are like, I'm so lucky, everything works out for me. And that's sort of a trend now of people saying, I'm so lucky, everything works out for me. It got a whole bunch of backlash for being toxic and saying it was, all these things like in the society that we live in, as will happen. But I thought that's just a beautiful sentiment, and full stop. It's a beautiful sentiment. I'm lucky. Everything works out. This is going to work out for me. This is going to be great. I expect to find good people. This experience is going to be good. That changes everything.
Everything in every aspect. You're totally right. So a couple of final questions for you. What do you wish for women at midlife?
To come back to yourself, to realize who you really, really are. I call menopause a hero's journey. And a lot of people talk about what you go through in menopause, but no one's put the hero's journey label on it. And I took a script writing course in part of my, in London, the exciting London, not the London I'm from, in Canada. I think I was around 46 and I took the screenwriting course, and it was amazing. It was at the National Film and Television School, and there were really cool people there. And in it, I learned about the hero's journey. And basically, it's an archetype for every story that you've ever heard, every poem that's ever been written, it's our lives. It's encapsulated in our mini challenges. Basically, you're called to a challenge and you don't want to accept the call. And then you do accept the call and you have many challenges. You have a dark night of the soul. You learn, you grow, you encounter helpers, you encounter foes, and then you come out of it, and then you hopefully bring some information or goodness back to your tribe. And so I want women to know that what all we're going through, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, it can't be separated out. It is a journey that you're meant to go through. You're coming back to yourself because we're beautiful creatures of God in the universe, like, not to get too metaphysical about it, but we are, like, this is a magical experience. We don't remember what happened before we got here. I don't think what happens after is going to be horrible. I don't think we need to be scared. We just need to figure out how we can be our best selves here. We can face the little challenges. Who are we meant to be? Like, this one beautiful life that we have. This is our chance to figure it out. I want women to rest in that job and that calling fully. And that's why I get so bothered when things are bogged down in fighting, in this drug or that therapy, because I think it's just so much bigger than that.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. Ooh, the hero's journey. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that again. But that's true. As you were saying it, I was kind of thinking of my own journey, a couple different things, because we've all gone. I think we truly do get to this place where you kind of have to burn everything down to a certain degree of, like, our old ideas and beliefs and structures, and like the shoulds, burn down all the shoulds, and really getting back into who you are and heeding the call. You said heeding the call. And I know I was called, and there's going to be these other factors that are going to be railing against you to not heed your call. And it's going to be rough, but it's like, it's beautiful. It's like, and then you're coming back.
You don't want to heed the call. I got too obsessed with the hero's journey when I did this screenwriting course, and it's very difficult to write a screenplay, but I got obsessed with it. And so, think of like Mel Gibson, I think in Lethal Weapon, he wants to retire, and it's his last day. And then this big thing comes and he doesn't want to, he's mad. That's it. That's basically, but that in a micro level and everything. I got way too into it. So I was applying it to literally like the smallest things, like in my daily, like, I don't know what, and my friends were rolling their eyes. When I get into something, I really get into it, but I think it works on a micro level or a macro level. I went on a hiking trip in Turkey for over my birthday last year. And I think that's sort of an example, because my friend said, you want to go on this hiking trip? And I'm big at saying yes to challenges, but then I'll second guess my decision to do it because the fear comes in. And I was going through a lot of gut challenges, and like I couldn't train properly. And then my shoes didn't come in time. And then I developed this pain in my foot, and, and then I just made this decision, like, we're all going on the trip. This orchestra of people freaking out in your head. We're all going. Like, I just felt like I was having a meeting, like, we're all going. I don't care how any of you, what you're doing. And so that's just an example of, like, I answered the call because I could have not gone. And then it was horribly difficult for the first couple of days. I didn't have the right equipment. I felt like I fell down like 3 times one day. And the leader said, no one's ever fallen down that much, like in one day as you today. And I was embarrassed, and I had to carry my pack. And then like the 4th day I got stronger. And then by the end, I was just having a whale of a time. So proud of myself. So incredibly proud. I'd gone on one of these vacations I had seen other people do my whole lives and thought that's for other people, not me. And now I want to go on one in Nepal. So I'll get the right shoes and backpack. But that's just an example of a little example of it.
Oh, I love that. I'm like, did Cheryl Strayed write a book about your journey? Did I read this story before? The shoes, all of that. I was like, oh my God, it's funny. I love that you did that. And so every woman needs to go do that. Follow your heart. It doesn't have to make sense, and just say yes. Just say yes. No. One of my final questions. What do you think the best thing is about being at midlife?
Oh gosh, like, okay, I'm 6 months from my last period. I have been in an epic perimenopause. I'm about to turn 53. So it's been going on at least 10 years, but I think longer. but I can feel almost like a video game level going up. Right now I'm feeling like a little bit flat. But I also am feeling like a peace. Like the anxieties and the getting hooked in things, those things are lifting. So I think the best thing is, like, I think you said a while ago, like, if you can get through this, when you get through it, it'll be good. And I formulated the tagline for one of the taglines for HotFlash Inc., which is "This is going somewhere good," when I read the chapter in Dr. Christiane Northrup's book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, on menopause. And when she talked about the actual process that goes on in your body, like your adrenal glands are designed to take over the production of estrogen, like the levels of hormones, they level out to the similar level that you have on those powerful days of your cycle when you can accomplish anything. And I saw that graph. I was like, well, this is amazing. Like, if I could feel like, we all know those days when you just could accomplish everything, you know? And so that's where it's going. And you only have to talk to a woman who's been through it. And they're not in any of this chaos or anger or yelling or fear that you can get tied up in at this time. It's a transition. It's going somewhere good. And I think if we do it right, we're figuring all this stuff out in the maelstrom and the storm, and we'll get to the other side. And then we can live with intention and purpose and the clarity, like, just sort of, when I say the video game going up, I can feel the peace settling. And if this is how it feels, then yes.
Ooh, well, I'm 53. And so when I ended up going back on the pill when I was having those horrible perimenopause things, because it was bad. And I said, I can't do this. So I went back to my OB and I said, I think I need to do this. And then at 50, she's like, you gotta go off. And then I just never had a period again. And so, to your point of that leveling out, there are things that I can actually separate. When I was in it and going, I had to tell myself, Jen, those are the hormones that are making you crazy. It's actually not your thoughts. Now, and funny enough, when I was on those patches, I was feeling crazy. So that's just a whole thing I need to figure out. But now if I get into a thing, it's because I've put too much stuff on my plate. But it's an interesting, like, I have so much energy. And I could just burn myself out because I have so much energy. And I'm passion filled, but this is what you get to look forward to. And did you interview or have you talked to Luann Bresidine? She like lives actually close to me. I need to read her book and I need to have her on my podcast.
I've read her book. I was very close, but it didn't work out. But yeah, her book is essential. Actually, I would put that with Lara Briden and Dr. Anise Mukherjee for just essential reading, because it reframes the whole conversation. This is a transition. Even the brain fog, even the fatigue, these are like temporary. This is a temporary transition. And after I read her book, I thought about, it's kind of like if you just say, my kitchen's driving me nuts, everything's stuffed, I'm going to pull everything out. It's chaos. And then maybe you have to go to sleep when it's like that and tackle it the next morning. But then when it's all back and it's just humming, it's just like the greatest thing ever. That's how she kind of makes it seem. And why not? That's how it is. But too many people are drawing, and I know we're vulnerable for diseases at this time, Jen. This is the thing. I don't want to candy coat this. Our risks for cardiovascular disease catch up to men. The diabetic insulin resistance issue is pre-diabetic. It's huge. 2/3 of us are dementia cases. We can't ignore any of that. But we become more vulnerable to all of this because of the transition that we're in. And she explains that. But I don't like the direct line that's being drawn from menopause to disease. There seems like there's too many people drawing a direct line. And I feel that there are agendas behind that. So I think it's important not to fall prey to that.
Right.
It's important to be mindful and do all the things you can do to protect yourself from disease, but not to think, I can't remember this word, like, oh my God, you see those headlines all the time. I thought I had early onset dementia. These are really damaging. I don't know that that's what it means, because this is inherently part of when your brain is undergoing that. I think it's a 20% reduction. So of course you're forgetting words. Of course you're tired, of course, but talk to women who've been through it. Hold on, give yourself grace, right?
Ooh, two things just popped up, and it's interesting to know. I was feeling overwhelmed. I think it was December. There was a lot going on. I had events. We're going to the holidays. We were traveling. I have 3 teenagers, all this stuff. And my husband and one of my kids was like, "Is mom going crazy?" And I stopped my husband and I said, "You know what? When you guys are saying that it's actually damaging and not making me feel good," I said, "I actually do feel like I'm going crazy. So for you
Right.
guys to say that, it's not helping." And I said, "I know I have a lot on my plate. I know I probably put too much on." And so I actually sat down, and I need to have a full conversation, but I actually sat down to kind of explain what was going on to me. So I wanted to just bring this up because we tend to suffer in silence. And not that I'm technically suffering, but it's like, here's what's going on with my body. And these are the changes. And so I said, this, how you guys are talking to me is not helpful because I'm already thinking I'm going crazy. And so, thankfully my husband's really understanding and he's like, "Oh my gosh." And then we're not saying mom's crazy anymore. But it's good to know sort of what things are going through. But I need to like read her book, because the one thing she said that I read, like one article, was that when we are younger and we're still ovulating, we have this ability to multitask because we're supposed to. It's like the baby on the hip and the stirring the pot and the watching the kids play. We could do all these things because that's the time in life we are. But when you're done and you're not ovulating anymore, like where I am, and you're postmenopausal, we lose that ability to sort of multitask. So it's not really brain fog and we're going crazy. It's that our brain is reshifting, but that's what gives us this push when you can really zero in on this calling and this next thing, and why women get so like, I need to do something with purpose and really kind of go all in on that. And so, and then of course, time management and all that's going to be our friend, but we cannot, I don't even know if we could ever really purposely multitask like the way we're told we could actually multitask. But that's just another thing I wanted to offer up to everybody listening. It's like, we're not going crazy, and we all have too much on our plates, but really when you get to this phase, we do lose, I think, biologically some of that ability, because we're not ovulating, we're not having baby. When you hit menopause and you're out, that's defined by, if you haven't had a period for one whole year, you're actually in menopause, postmenopause actually. So I just wanted to bring that up. But there's so much reading, and we're going to link all of that in the show notes, because we all have required reading to do. This is the reading we need to be doing so we understand. Christiane Northrup, that was the Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. That was my first sort of book. That was like the alternative, thinking about, I was reading about why I might have endometriosis. And I think I started reading that in my late 20s. So that got me into sort of all alternative, what do you call it, realms and ideas and information. So I'm glad you brought that. I need to read that book too, her second one.
She's been really, she's changed her focus as in her retirement. So she's become a very controversial figure because of her views on the things that are going on in the world. And she's basically been canceled entirely.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 100%. So I had interviewed, I mean, when I launched HotFlash, she was the number one person. I'm like, I'll interview her. And actually I saw her on Oprah, and I remember thinking, I want to interview her someday when I'm going through menopause. So I did interview her, but she's sort of persona non grata. Her video was taken down from YouTube. I put it up and it was taken down. So anyway, the work she did in menopause stands on its own, in my opinion. And I'm not someone who won't say someone's name. Like, who knows what I'm going to do when I retire? Do you know what I mean? Like, who knows what I'm going to talk about? So I don't cancel people. And I think that I think her work and the way she looked at it was so forward thinking. And, she's who Oprah called, and she helped Oprah. So.
Sorry about that. My computer was going to die, so I had to just.
I also just wanted to say one thing. It's normal to worry constantly that you're dying of something. I think that's normal.
We have to all, it's
I mean, the running thoughts in my head in the last 2 years, as I've been trying to sort out my health conditions, are like that I'm dying, like the brain is dying, like, well, maybe I have this, maybe I have that. I've just been through and tested everything. I'm like, you're not, and my brain, I think it's part of the anxiety. I think there's a lot of us at this stage just walking around like, is something majorly wrong? And I just don't know. And so that's really difficult. That's really, really difficult. So just like put that top of mind, get it checked out, obviously get things checked out, but also know that a lot of us are having these worries.
Yeah. And anxiety is high at midlife, and we're all thinking, and there's simply too much going on. And so I'm constantly telling people, you've got to just clear things out, clear things out, clear things out. Everything doesn't have to be done right away. And that's just the way we're going to push on through. All right. My final, well, it's not actually a question. I want you to finish this sentence. I'm not too fucking old too.
Ooh. I'm not too fucking old to have a big, bold, beautiful, juicy life of my choosing.
Ooh, I love that. What a great way to end. And that's just, and it's just the damn truth. It's just the damn truth.
It is the truth. And anything else you hear, what? It just isn't available to us because we're older. It's just noise. It's just noise. And we're, when I used to think of getting older, I think I thought like I would be the only old one, maybe. Like we all are here together. We're all here together. So let's just make it the best. Like we were just put on this earth to live and to satisfy this. Yeah. I'm not too old to, is just, there's nothing. Except maybe snowboarding.
Ooh. Or I actually picked that up when I was 25. So my son has challenged me to a duel or something when we go up skiing in a couple of weeks. I'm like, all right, buddy. So now I'm going to have to want to kick his ass because he's almost 18 and he challenged me. So
it's not, I don't mean snowboarding per se. I mean, maybe like, maybe I don't do handstands anymore because I dislocated my shoulders. You know what I mean? Like I'm saying within reason, like, there are things that it's like, yeah. And that is always a constant thing when you've been a really active person and you've been athletic to sort of, okay, maybe like I'm going to go back skating next week. I used to be a figure skater and I'm not going to be like attempting to do like, a double flip. I might just do a spin. Like, yeah.
Oh, I love that though. I didn't know you're a figure skater. That's all. I have to talk about that.
Canadian.
All right. Well, clearly I could talk to you forever because, I would just let this go for 3 more hours because there's so much to talk about. But
it's Joe Rogan. It's like Andrew Huberman style.
I know. It's like, this might be my longest one, but I'm like, I don't want to stop as long as you can keep talking. We're going to keep talking. This is good. This is good information.
You can cut it however you want. Cut it out.
We're going to keep it all, honey. All right. So where can we find you, support you, stock HotFlash Inc.? Where can we get all more of Anne Marie? And of course, there's going to be the HotFlash Inc., the movie coming out since, you said you took a screenwriting class. So we'll be looking for that.
Oh, yeah.
Until that hits, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm still working on that one. Screenwriting is very difficult. I'm not criticizing any more movies. Okay. So I'm HotFlash Inc. across everything. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. My website is HotFlash Inc. And I have a Substack. So that's where I communicate directly. I write about, I have a paid and I have a free version, roundups, Q&As. In the paid version, you get some sneak peeks and interviews and hot takes that you don't get, but there's lots of free stuff there too. And I have a podcast every week, and that's all found wherever you find podcasts under HotFlash Inc. And I also have a YouTube channel, but I'm working on it, and a Pinterest, but I'm working on it.
We're working on those things. We talked about that before we got on, all the things that we haven't quite done that we're doing. So anyway, but we'll save you guys from that conversation.
When we get our team.
We get our teams and our dream life anyway. But oh God, it's been so fabulous chatting with you. Thank you for taking the time. I just have loved like seeing your shiny face like across my Zoom screen that's not on, social media, and just what a treat. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.